Hi there. My name is Garrett. I'm the COO and co-founder of Microgreen Manager, and today we're going to talk about how to create custom crops. Now we can see here we're on the crops tab, and we've already preloaded it with all the default crops that we talked about in the last video. So right now we're going to make a crop from the start, and I'm going to pick a crop that's not already in here. So we have basil Genovese. I'm going to make lemon basil. So we'll go to options and new crop. We'll give it a name, basil, comma, lemon. The grow time is in days and hours. So you can just do 21, or if there's a soak time, which we will talk about in a little bit, you do 12:12, or you could do 12.5. And when you hit tab to go to the next one, it'll automatically reformat that for you to 12 and a half, 21 and a half days. We're gonna leave it at 21. The expected yield is going to be about 4. Over on units, we sell in terms of ounces. So we'll put 4 ounces. The sowing density is 4 grams. So we will go and change that to about 4 grams. Now, anything with an asterisk next to it is a required field. You'll notice that the expected yield is required because the software needs to know that number in order to do a lot of tray calculations. Sow density, though, is not mandatory yet. And this is useful information for you or employees to always have a reference point for what the sow density is. In the future, we would like to do some inventory management with the software. So those are features that are coming in the future. Sow density will eventually feed into that. Next, we have max hold time and delivery buffer time. These are not required. They have units of days, and they're going to default to 0 if you put nothing here. On the right, we have these little tooltips that tell you what they are. So the max hold time says this is how long you can hold this crop after harvest before it can no longer be sold. So for example, if we put a 1 here, and we might have some excess basil on harvest day. So what we're saying is if we harvest on a Friday, that we are okay holding that crop for 1 more day in our fridge before it is no longer good to sell because, for example, we want it to be super fresh. So on a Friday harvest, if this is set to 1, if somebody reaches out on Saturday and wants the product, the software will say this is still good to sell. But if they reach out on a Sunday, it'll say this is now too old. Delivery buffer time is how long before delivery that the crop should be harvested. And so what this means is that, for example, if you do a lot of deliveries and a lot of harvesting, maybe you do all of your harvesting on a Thursday and all of your deliveries on a Friday. If that's the case, you would want to set all your crops to have a delivery buffer time of 1 for 1 day, which means the software will prompt you to harvest everything on a Thursday, knowing that your delivery is on a Friday. And what's important to note here is that the delivery buffer time cannot be greater than the max hold time. Because what this is saying is that you want the software to prompt you to harvest your crops 1 day in advance of delivery, but you are unwilling to hold that crop any longer than the day it is harvested, and anything after that day it is no longer good. Which obviously doesn't make sense that you would harvest the crops and throw them out, or that they would be too old the next day. So these need to be the same number, or the delivery buffer time needs to be less than. So we're gonna leave that at 0 for now. And we can add any notes here. For example, basil goes on rack number 2. Maybe you always put it in the same spot in the farm. Now we can start adding sizes. You can add as many sizes as you want. For us, we tend to have a 2-ounce option for restaurants and an 8-ounce option for wholesale. Again, you can pick ounces or grams. We sell in terms of ounces. And now we can start adding steps. Notice there's no asterisk for steps. And that's because if you don't add any additional steps, the software will create 2 for you. 1 for a planting step at time 0, and 1 for a harvest time equal to the total grow time. So if we go in here, we will see there are a set number of options you can pick from. We already know planting is going to be at time 0, so we don't actually need to make that step. And for us, for basil, we do a humidity dome. When to start, days and hours. So this is going to start also at time 0, because it happens effectively right after the planting. So we'll put 0 there. And again, there's a tooltip here to read more about how this works. Description, all our humididomes go on rack number 1. The next step is going to be putting them out under lights. And for us, that happens for basil around day 5. And when they come out and go under lights, they're going to go to rack number 4. That's it. We added 2 custom steps, and it's going to have the 2 default steps. So we should see that there's 4 steps. If we look here, lemon basil, as expected, there's 4 steps. And it gives you a brief overview here that it's going to be 21 days. If we click in, we can see some of that information again. We have more information here. We have the expected yield, the sow density. If it's an active crop, we can talk about archiving later. Any notes, when this crop was created and last updated. We can see our sizes, and we can see the 4 steps. And as I said, plant will always be first unless you put a soak step before it, which we can talk about. And harvest will always be last, and we have our steps in between here. So that's a quick overview on how to create a custom crop.